Hello and welcome to Love Thy Lawyer, where we talk to real lawyers about their lives in and out of the practice of law, how they got to be lawyers, and what their experience has been. I'm Goodman, the host of the show, and yes, I'm a lawyer. Nobody's perfect. He served as a combat advisor in Khost, Afghanistan. He served on the United States Naval aircraft carrier. He studied strategy and war at the Naval War College. He is a former company commander, a Navy Expeditionary Combat Command. He is admitted to practice in both California and Texas. He has served as a deputy district attorney and has litigated extensively on both sides of the criminal courts. And he has a family with young children. Alex Harper, welcome to Love Thy Lawyer.
Well, thank you. It's very nice to be here.
Well, you have certainly served your country in many capacities. Currently, you are living where?
So I'm currently living in Frisco, Texas, which is just a little north of Dallas, so a suburb of Dallas.
And it's okay to call Frisco, Texas, Frisco, I take it.
It is. It is not nearly the mortal sin. It would be referring to the city very near you by that word.
I've always been interested in talking to you for the podcast because I met you, I guess a couple of years before the whole COVID thing hit. And you were doing some kind of serious criminal litigation in Oakland. And I found out about your background in the military.
Yes.
So first of all, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your background even before then. Like, where are you from originally?
So, yes, I'm from a little bit of all over. My dad was a fighter pilot in the Air Force, and my mom was sort of a free-range hippie, I guess. So they split up while my dad was in Vietnam, and I went back and forth between the two of them. So by the time I graduated from junior high, I think junior high was about my 14th or 15th school.
Wow.
And so a lot of that was in the Midwest, in North Dakota, Kansas, Nebraska, Texas, New Mexico, all over the place. But I went to high school, and a lot of that was in places like Camarillo and Oxnard. But I went to high school all 4 years in Santa Barbara. So Santa Barbara is one of the two places I consider my hometown. The other being, Berkeley, where I spent more time than any place else after when I was attending school.
So being 4 years in Santa Barbara, that was really quite the settle down for you.
Big time. I'd never experienced anything like that. I'd spent most of my life being jealous of kids who had been around a year or two in the same place. And I feel like I really rooted in Santa Barbara.
And how was the high school experience for you? What'd you do there? Anything besides studying algebra and American history?
I very nearly got busted a whole bunch of times. I was one of those kids who's kind of sailed through the AP and GT classes with real high marks. I was a National Merit Scholar, semifinalist, and all that sort of thing. But I probably more often than not, I wasn't even in school. So I was a functional delinquent, I guess would be the way to put it.
Now, after you functionally delinquented your way out of Santa Barbara, I take it you graduated.
I did.
Where'd you go to college?
So I went to UC Berkeley out of there. And to tell you the truth, I have no idea how I snowed them into letting me in. But I was surprised, as a lot of my peers were, that I made it in. But I had good solid SAT scores in that, and I guess that was enough to carry the day. But yeah, so I ended up going to Berkeley for about a year before I very nearly dropped out. And I just realized I had a lack of vision. I had no idea why I was going there other than I thought I was supposed to. And after organic chemistry, I realized there was a difference between aptitude and interest. So I withdrew and I went back to Santa Barbara City College, which is probably just about the greatest city college that's ever existed. And went from being this anonymous person in this sea of underclassmen to someone who was on a first name basis with my professors, and I developed a real interest in learning at that point. I really became interested in not only learning, but being challenged while doing it. And so I spent 3 semesters there, didn't get an associate's degree or anything like that. And I just went back to Berkeley and did some work there. And somewhere in between, I went to a semester abroad in Shandong University in Jinan, China. So sort of in Central Eastern China, I guess.
Did you enjoy that?
I loved it. That's really when I made that transition from thinking I needed to be some sort of scientist or something like that, or be a doctor to be happy, to realizing I really actually enjoyed, people and human endeavors. And I switched over to political science and ended up graduating from Berkeley with a degree in political science and East Asian studies.
What did you do after you graduated from Cal?
So when I graduated, I was kind of conflicted as to what I was going to do. So I'd actually gone to join the Marine Corps after my junior year at Cal, and went through officer candidate school with the Marines, and through what they call the platoon leadership class program, where you'd go your junior year and then you finish your degree and then get your Marine Corps commission and continue on. I ended up being a logistician and ended up being stationed on an aircraft carrier for 3 years.
And what carrier was that?
It was the Dwight D. Eisenhower out of Norfolk, Virginia. So I went through OCS and flight training in Pensacola, then went through logistics training in Athens, Georgia, and then got assigned to Eisenhower in, I guess that would have been 1998, in Norfolk, Virginia. And we went on did one Persian Gulf cruise with them in 2000. And it was the last good cruise in the Navy. It was the battle cruise that replaced us, had a ship in it called the USS Cole, which was attacked. And that ended Liberty ports, I guess, from then till now. But when we went, we got to go to 8 or 10 ports of call and just had a ball all over Europe and the Middle East and that, but with only minimal combat operations. So it was a good time-ish.
Well, speaking of combat operations, you actually did serve in combat in the military. Is that correct?
I did. I was actually, once I was outside of the flight regiment, I was no longer what they call a line officer. I wasn't a combat guy anymore. But I had actually graduated. This was after I'd gone to law school and become an attorney, a district attorney in Kern County. And I'd been there for, about a year and a half when I got a call saying, hey, Commander Harper. I was a lieutenant commander at the time. I said, hey, Commander Harper, have you ever been deployed? And I told the guy on the other end, I said, I don't know, but something tells me my answer is about to change. So they tried to send me off to Iraq at the time to replace someone who we had lost in an attack on the Bagram International, or not Bagram, the Baghdad International Airport. But a couple people way above my pay grade got in a fight, and it ended up me being sent to Afghanistan later that year. So, and I was in Khost, Afghanistan, which at the time, I guess laymen who don't know the area but have seen any of the movies about the area, about the capture of Osama bin Laden and that, we were very close neighbors to the CIA base that was attacked. That's depicted in that movie Zero Dark 30. But it was a real dicey place to be. It was wild, wild west for sure. So I definitely did see some combat-ish stuff there. I ended up, despite the fact that I was a logistics officer embedded with the Afghan army to advise them on logistics, there was no advising the Afghan army on logistics. That just wasn't going to happen. So I ended up being a turret gunner in logistics convoys across Khost province.
You were wounded.
Well, I was in the middle of some attacks and got my bell rung and was exposed to some pretty nasty stuff. But I didn't get like an open bleeding wound kind of thing. But yeah, I was in the middle of a suicide car bomb and a bunch of artillery rocket attacks. So yeah, there was good times were had by all.
You've had a lot of education at this point. You'd been in the military. What made you decide to go to law school?
When I graduated, or when I was getting ready to graduate from Cal, I had taken the Barbary course. No, it's not Barbary. What is it? Kaplan course to study for the LSAT. And I don't know why I was doing that, other than I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do after this. And it was at that point that I said, well, I can go to law school or I can go fly planes for the military, which in my mind, you had two things you could do in life. You could be a doctor or a fighter pilot, and anything else would just be lame, or so I thought at the time. And I figured, well, I can be a lawyer later, but I can't fly later. So I pursued that Navy thing first. And when I got out of the Navy, because I had ended up going into this, logistics pipeline that didn't feel like a long-term fit for me. I had already taken the LSATs. I had gotten an exceptionally good score, and I just started throwing out applications while I was still on active duty. And so I ended up just sort of defaulting into law school, I guess. I didn't have any great big vision as to what I wanted to do with a law degree or anything like that. And my kind of passion for criminal law only came along after I'd worked in I'd done a family law clinic in Florida at law school, and then I'd gone on to getting a job at a really nice boutique firm in Santa Barbara. But it was one of those things where until you had 7 or 8 years under your belt, there was no way they were going to let you go to court with one of their clients as the lead. So I ended up getting out of that, practicing very briefly in Monterey. And again, just kind of didn't like the civil thing. So I thought, well, I'll go get some trial experience. And that's when I went to the DA's office in Kern County, interviewed at several different DA's offices, and got a pretty good offer from them. So went there.
So let me just back up for just a minute.
Sure.
What law school did you go to?
So I went to University of Florida, and that was just a function of.
And where's that located in Florida?
In Gainesville. So that would be kind of in the center of the upper third of sort of the peninsula part of Florida, very separate from Florida State, which is off in the Panhandle. And
That's
I don't
it.
want to mix those up.
No, I know. I interviewed another attorney for this podcast who had gone to Florida State, and she wanted to make sure that I didn't mix them up either.
Yeah, right. She didn't want to give too much credit. So, being a Gator is an awful special thing.
So let me just get this right. You are, in fact, a Gator. Is that correct?
I am a Gator, yes.
How did you end up going to the district attorney's office?
What I really wanted to do was do trials. And I didn't know that I particularly wanted criminal law, but I wanted to be doing trials right now. So I joined the DA's office in Kern County, which is, if you want to be a prosecutor, that's a great place to be a prosecutor. It's I'll put it this way. I didn't know how good I had it as a prosecutor there. I managed to mistake a community that was very prosecution minded with me having some kind of great skill.
Yeah, I've made that mistake too, even here in Alameda County.
And that's the beginning of that realization about how much hubris is involved in the whole system. But I realized I really liked criminal law. And after a while, I also realized I really had some problems with being on not all the time, but sometimes being on the prosecution side. There were some things that I just weren't resonating well with me, especially when you're kind of going out after work and partying with cops and all that sort of thing. And some of the attitudes that would come out from time to time. And I'm not saying across the board, it was just an every now and then thing. And I really started to feel a pull for criminal defense work, where I felt that, you were working for, there was just a lot more on the line on the defense side.
How did you happen to come up to Alameda County?
Well, Alameda County was my second home, and it kind of almost surpassed Santa Barbara. Got my paralegal certificate through UC Extension right as I graduated from Berkeley. So I had a lot of roots there, and it was just a matter of realizing that, I can afford to be there, and making that leap, from having a paycheck to being a sole practitioner and having to make it work on your own. It can be a scary leap.
What do you like about practicing law?
Law in general, I don't know if I would like doing a lot of civil stuff, but what I do like about practicing criminal law is every single day you have a real good chance to get your hair blown back by a story that you just can't believe. And everything is a challenge. So every single case that somebody says, oh, it's one of these, oh, it's a simple possession for sale case and all that. If you're doing your job right, nothing should be a simple blankety blank case. Everything is so individualized. And that's where the challenge lies, in humanizing your client for a jury or for a judge or for a DA who's just licking his chops to, at another notch in their belt. It's high stakes, and if you're doing your job right, it should be challenging. And I hear a lot of people say that you can't just go and wander around as a defense attorney. Well, that's not true. You can, but you're not doing anybody any favors. If you're doing it right, it should be hard. And I like that.
Would you recommend the law to a young person thinking about it as a career choice?
If it was someone who had the aptitude such that it was a viable option and they knew why they wanted to get into the law, then sure, I would. If in criminal law, whether it's defense or prosecution, I think you have to have a reason for wanting to do it that transcends making. And if they have that desire to make a difference, a desire to help people, whether it be victims or defendants, and that desire supersedes career progression and a paycheck, then yes, if they see it as a career and not a job.
What about the military as a career? What do you think about that as a recommendation to a young person?
I think the military is a fantastic thing, especially for people who come from non-diverse backgrounds. I think it's an incredibly eye-opening experience, and I'm talking about on the enlisted side. So kids coming out of high school or whatever, especially kids who feel, and there's so many of them all across in every segment of society, that people who just feel like they are planted in their neighborhood and that's all that there is. I think it's a huge eye-opening experience, and it really opens people up to seeing what a true meritocracy is. In my experience in working in the military, absolutely somebody's ability and willingness to do the hard work transcended their appearance and their background. And I think people really learn to value people for who they are as an individual as opposed to what they look like or what they come from. And in that regard, absolutely. And as an officer, it's pretty darn nice to come out of college and have that solid of a job that demands that you learn and practice leadership. And for those reasons, I would absolutely recommend the military. So, and obviously there's certain things that you can do in the military you just simply can't do anywhere else. So, if you want to go fly an airplane and do crazy, awesome stuff like that, yeah, go do it in the military. Even if your end goal is to be an airline pilot, go do it in the military. It's a lot more fun. You get to do things that nobody else gets to do. And you get to actually help our country while you're doing it.
Let me get back to law for a minute. And how is actually practicing either met or different from your expectations about it?
I had no idea when I went to law school, first of all, that I didn't realize that a bar card was a ticket to go make the living you want to make. So if you want to forego creature comforts and just get down in the pits and help the disenfranchised, if that's what your gig is, you can do that. If what you want to do is build up a law firm and provide a very comfortable living for your family, you can do that. What I didn't realize is you are not beholden to somebody giving you a paycheck. And I didn't quite realize that going in. And the amount of freedom you can have to, now given it's a weird kind of freedom, right? So if you're going and working for yourself, man, that's hard work and it takes up all your time. And there's no, in my case anyway, I had a hard time compartmentalizing sometimes. When I was done working for the day and I was driving home, a lot of times that's what I was still thinking about. When I'm trying to go to sleep and relax at night, I'm still thinking, oh man, maybe I should be working on this case. It's really hard to put it away. Yeah. But you're on vacation. You can't stop thinking about that client of yours that's sitting in the can. And I guess I didn't realize what an adventure it would be. I didn't realize how just vivid and alive the practice of criminal defense or criminal prosecution would be. I really thought it would be, a lot more institutional and gray, but it's not. It's an incredibly vibrant thing to be involved in. Then the camaraderie of sitting in court, when you go into a judge's chambers and in the morning and everybody's there, and it's kind of exciting to see which of your colleagues are going to be there and what they're talking about. And it's amazing. It's just such an amazing community that you're exposed to. And I didn't anticipate that. I really had images of cubicles and offices and, late hours and hard drinking corporate guys or something. And that hasn't been my experience at all.
Is there anything that you know now that you really wished you knew before you started practicing?
I think I wish I had known more about kinds of law, especially criminal law. Criminal law is so different. I think, most judges that have switched assignments between criminal and civil will tell you that it's just night and day. And I wish I'd realized the camaraderie and the civility of criminal practice going in. Family law to me was so uncivil. It was, just angry and mean and over the top. And I had no idea that when you're going into criminal law, that it would be this civil, that we on each side of the bench would treat each other this well. And I kind of wish I'd known about that.
What do you think's the best advice you've ever received?
Oddly enough, it was something that my dad had mentioned to me. My dad was talking about being in Vietnam, and when he first got there, and when they were going on these combat flights, his compatriots would finally sat him down and said, "Hey, Harper, you need to accept that the worst is going to happen. Just accept that you're going to die over here, and everything else gets easier." As morbid as that was, that helped me when I was in Afghanistan. But it helps a lot in court as well, oddly enough, when I'm going into, say, a murder trial, and I'm so afraid of screwing something up and losing the trial, or my client going to prison, and all that. Just accepting the worst might happen, but then working really hard to make sure that that's not what happens. But to set aside sort of the fear and the trepidation that goes with it, compartmentalize and do the job.
Do you think the legal system is fair?
No, I don't. I think that there have been so many instances of demonstrable unfairness that it would be silly to say it's not. And I don't think a lot of these cases that have come out in an unfair way were outliers. I think it's very common. I think the system needs a major comprehensive overhaul to get rid of the vestiges we have of racial discrimination, especially. I mean, that to me is the crux of the unfairness in the system right there.
Let me switch gears here for a minute. What's your family life like, and how has practicing law affected that?
Interestingly, I was a prosecutor up until while my kids were toddlers. And then I moved to the Bay Area, and I was living in the East Bay there. And while they were getting older, but because I was a sole practitioner, I was able to really divide my time up a bit. I've ended up with a lot of flexibility to be there with my kids, and that's incredibly important to me. My wife is an ER nurse at a trauma center there in the Bay Area, and she works fairly unconventional schedules, but we were able to work around each other a lot better.
Obviously, you're admitted in California, and you recently moved to Texas.
Right.
What was the process of getting admitted in Texas like?
It was really surprisingly easy.
So if someone is an attorney in California and they want to go practice in Texas,
yes,
all they have to do is you have to establish residency?
No, don't have to do that at all.
You just have to apply and pass the background check and wait 270 days, and you'll be a lawyer in Texas.
As long as they don't find out about what you did with that motorcycle club. Yeah.
All right. Well, now that you've brought up the motorcycle club, and I know you ride motorcycles, any other recreational pursuits that you enjoy?
So my biggest one is the motorcycling. I do very long distance motorcycle riding, and to me that's a great escape and therapy from the practice of law. So I do really long rides. Like I've got a motorcycle set up to where I rode to all 48 contiguous states in 10 days. And then I like going around and screwing around with my kids with playing Legos or making model rockets for them or anything like that. And when I have time, I like to spend a little bit of time doing woodworking and that, building bits of furniture and all that, mostly just experimenting with how to build something new.
What keeps you up at night?
I have 3 daughters, and between 9 and 11 years old. I really just worry about what the future holds for our country and wondering if we've lost something awfully special in terms of our ability to tolerate each other over the last several years.
Let's say you came into some real money, a few $1 billion. $3-4 billion. What, if anything, would you do differently in your life?
I would figure out a very, very solid way to pull resources together to help people see each other, people to see the need for equal treatment of people, for people to have equal opportunity. When I was in Afghanistan, there were kids who had nothing, who were destitute, who were approached by Taliban folks and said, "Hey, here's $30, which is more money than your parents are going to make this entire year. Here's a rifle. I just want you to go out and take one pot shot at those Americans driving by." And that's a lot of what the fire we took was, just a kid taking a shot at us, dropping a rifle and running away. And, at the time we hated those kids, and we wanted to visit great violence upon them, but but by the grace of God go I. There was no difference between that kid and me. And I think doing something with that money to make people understand that. And second of all, I'd also ride my motorcycle around the world in every direction possible.
Alex Harper, thank you so much for joining me today on the Love Thy Lawyer podcast. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
It's absolutely been a pleasure to be here. I'm flattered that you thought of me as someone to engage with this, and thank you.
That's it for today's episode of Love Thy Lawyer. If you enjoyed listening, please share it with a friend and subscribe to the podcast. If you have comments or suggestions, send me an email. I promise I'll respond. Take a look at our website at lovethylawyer.com, where you can find all of our episodes, transcripts, photographs, and information. Thanks as always to my guests who share their wisdom, and to Joel Katz for music, Bryan Matheson for technical support, and Tracy Harvey. I'm Louis Goodman.
So I graduated from Cal. I kind of bummed around just a little bit. I wasn't sure I was going to take the Navy thing up. So I started taking flight lessons out at Buchanan Field in Concord. I didn't spend a whole lot of time with students. I spent most of my time with motorcycle riders and bikers and that, and up in the Berkeley Hills and out at Sears Point Racetrack and all that sort of thing.